points deduction, return of awards. The consequences in red are AFC cannot impose those. We're not police. We're not. We cannot put people behind bars. We can't do that. We're not the sponsors. So imprisonment, legal action to recover damages, and being labelled a national disgrace. In line of all these consequences, this brings me to the question Richard had raised: that sports integrity, do good guys finish last? And my answer to that would be, in the short term, maybe you might get a few wins here and there, but ultimately, if you look at the depth of these consequences which you're potentially facing, we've actually, if you Google online, you'll find cases where players in particular countries have committed suicide after being found guilty of match fixing. You'll hear of cases of players who were beaten up whenever they refused to listen to match fixes, legs broken, badly injured. So good guys not finish last, I'd say. Short-term gains, short-term benefits, but that's about it. Other aspect of good governance, partnership with key stakeholders. We say football is a team sport. We cannot eliminate match fixing ourselves, and neither can law enforcement agencies or our other partners. So we work very closely with FIFA and our other confederations in terms of intel sharing and best practices. Law enforcement agencies, we're working with a number of them within our member associations. For the Asian Cup, we established an information sharing MOU with the Australian Federal Police. We're working very closely with the CPIB, for example, in Singapore. Sportradar is our partner which monitors the betting markets and highlights or escalates any suspicious betting movements in the markets which are indicative of prior knowledge based on which people have been placing money. Interpol, primarily in our awareness raising initiatives. The MA capacity building, MAs, our member associations, including FAM, are our critical partners. We have an integrity officer appointed at every member association. We work very closely with them, and our long-term objective is to empower them to basically be able to handle and manage any integrity initiatives within their jurisdiction, with a good level of expertise. That being said, that does not mean that we do not cooperate with them, we do not work with them. We work hand in hand and very, very closely. The other aspect is awareness raising and training under prevention. We've identified targets, the integrity officers which I just spoke to you about. We conduct tailored courses for them with FIFA and Interpol. We've had trained the trainer, which basically trains them to deliver an approved session to players or officials before their teams travel anywhere. Fact finders, which basically focuses on investigations, how to conduct sporting investigations. For players and officials, we conduct pre-competition briefings, team arrival meetings, match coordination meetings. Integrity is touched everywhere. We have a development program called Kickoff. We talk about those. Within those forums, we talk about match fixing and a number of other forums whenever we get a chance. A very important aspect is the partnership development meetings. We call them PDMs, which we conduct with our MAs, and we invite key country stakeholders to come on the same table so we can collectively address any hurdles being faced with respect to that particular country. We've held one with FAM as well, and a number of other countries to help take this fight forward. The resources use presentations, booklets, videos. We even make our officials sign integrity declarations, which are confirmations that they agree to abide by the rules of KFC, and that, for example, they won't bet on any football matches, they'll report any information, they will not themselves indulge in any form of fixing. All those aspects are covered in those declarations. And then posters and dressing rooms. The second aspect is monitoring and reporting, which comes under detection. So we've identified sources of information feeding into the AFC Integrity Unit. We have our MA Integrity Officer that I mentioned already. We have Sportradar, which monitors all our competitions, so we know what's happening in the betting markets. If there's suspicious movement, we know that there was knowledge in the market for what the outcome of the match is going to be. If certain money is placed, for example, in the last 10 minutes, 2 or 3 more goals are going to be scored, and a lot of people are putting money into it, that creates a suspicious betting movement with the way that algorithms work. So we can notify that, and we understand that there is knowledge out there, and then we can match that with match action, what is actually happening on the pitch. Did Jeffrey give out penalties in the last 10 minutes? Did he aid this outcome to be confirmed? Did the players give penalties away? Or did the goalkeeper change his positioning? So there's a lot of aspects that are involved. Reporting mechanism, we have an email address set up. We ask all our officials and players in every one of the AFC jurisdiction, even external people, to report information. to that email address. And then obviously, as I mentioned earlier, key stakeholders, we have constant information flowing in from different parts of the world, FIFA, confederations, Europe, all over the world, and law enforcement agencies. So we have a very close working relationship. We realize that flow of information is very, very important in combating this problem. Very, very important. Finally, we have investigation and sanctions. We devised SOPs, internal SOPs, to take cases forward. And obviously, when sufficient evidence is found, we support the AFC judicial bodies in imposing sanctions. A snapshot of our SOPs, we have the information source of trigger, which I mentioned, source of information flowing into the AFC. There's a pre-assessment conducted by the integrity officer, saying how reliable the information is. Sometimes we get emails from fans saying that, team lost because the match was fixed. Where that might not be the case, because the fans of a particular team. And obviously, we still investigate that, but in most cases, we have to make a pre-assessment to see how credible that information is. A preliminary investigation is conducted. The integrity officer sees if there's a need to talk to an external party. We summon players, we summon officials, anyone within our jurisdiction that we can summon in line with our regulations, because everyone has an obligation to collaborate with us to establish facts. We summon them, we talk to them, and an investigation assessment is, investigation report is submitted to the Secretariat of the Disciplinary Committee. So I'm the investigator, refer to the Secretariat of the Disciplinary Committee as a prosecution. So they receive our investigation report, they conduct an assessment of the investigation report. If they feel that there's enough to open formal disciplinary proceedings, forward it on to the disciplinary committee, and decisions by the disciplinary committee can be taken to an appeals committee, and any decisions by the appeals committee are taken to CAS. The AFC Integrity Initiative, we're a young unit. We were established in the mid of 2013. In the past 2 years, these are the sanctions that have been imposed. In 2014, we had 1 life ban fine, 2 officials. And then the extension of final decisions means that our member association took a decision, but we extended it to a continental level within our region. For example, if a player is suspended, they want to extend that to continental level. That player is then suspended or banned, depending on the MS decision, all across the continent. And then we in turn can apply to FIFA to impose worldwide sanctions. So extension of final decisions, we have 1 official, provisional decisions, 6 players. In 2015, we had 9 life bans from an MA, and we were seeking to extend final decisions on 48 players and officials with 1 instance, which was team scored 5 own goals. But that's currently on hold because of a technicality, because one of our members is suspended at the moment. And then obviously we've had 3 officials and 4 players provisionally suspended, and we have a disciplinary committee meeting coming up within this week to decide how to take those cases forward. So I come to the end of the presentation. I just want to talk about where do we go on from here. We have the measures established, what is our future direction? And that is primarily overcoming hurdles. Primary hurdle that we face in my job, which it mentioned, can get very difficult at times, is lack of evidence. CAS jurisprudence talks about corruption by nature being concealed because evasive means are used. Like I said earlier, we are not police, we are not FBI, we do not have the restricted powers of investigation. When we summon players or officials to talk to us, they're not mostly forthcoming because they're scared sometimes of organized crime, other than that, of any bans that they might have to face. And then, obviously, the law enforcement agencies are not always cooperative. They have different priorities. Some take matters seriously, some do not. They're looking at a big spectrum of crimes happening within their jurisdiction. And we're looking at 47 countries as part of the AFC operation. The future direction, we're looking to increase formal collaboration with law enforcement agencies, information sharing MOUs, including that with the MSCC. We're contemplating amnesty, incentive measures, people who come talk to us, possibly reduce sentence, but it depends on, varies from case to case. And then obviously increased time for provisional sanctions. Provisional sanctions are given when the investigation is not complete, but immediately there is enough to actually raise enough suspicion. But that was previously 50 days, 30 plus 20, 30 days plus extendable by 20 days. But we realized that is not enough. And if For example, police is conducting an investigation, we need more time for that provisional sanction to last, because if a player has not been sentenced and the provisional sanction expires, and the player can go and has a right to play. And finally, we have to adapt to this evolving phenomenon of match fixing. Match fixers have had 10 to 15 years advantage on us. Yes, which is true, which we have to face the facts. There's a lot that we are catching up on. There's no entrepreneurial innovation. So how I like to put it, that it is an evolving phenomena. We learn. Some things work, some things don't work. That is why I had sharing of best practices. We apply a certain technique, doesn't work, we try to come up with new ones. So what you see uncovered is what we're at the moment. I like to think of it that way. And then there's a lot that we still need to cover, but we're on it. That brings me to the end. I believe we're going to take questions collectively. Right? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hassan.